The marathon continues. News time from Facts and Windows. I am Tatiana Vyzitska. Hello. Russia killed 5 civilians of Donetsk region, another 10 were injured. These are the data of the past day. Russian troops carried out 24 strikes in the region yesterday. The housing sector suffered. At night, the occupiers hit the residential quarters of Slavyansk with S-300 missiles. A pensioner died. Residents of Kostyantynivka also recovering from enemy sniper fire, where an enemy rocket fell in the yard of a residential building the day before. Our special correspondent Vyacheslav Kruglov met with eyewitnesses. Vlad, we are waiting for the latest information from you.
Hello, Tatiana. I'll start with the good news. The army liberated the village of Bogorodichna and the city of Svetohirsk in the Donetsk region. The armed forces of Ukraine are driving the Russians to the borders with Russia. Currently, our troops control almost the entire borderline in the Kharkiv region. Successful counter-offensive actions of the armed forces of Ukraine are currently taking place in Liman in Donetsk region. This was announced by the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration, Pavlo Kyrylenko. The official urges people not to leave the basements and wait for the armed forces to occupy the city. In Donetsk region, the Russian army is trying to somehow advance. However, she has not had any success in this direction in recent weeks. Therefore, the occupiers continue mercilessly shelling the cities of the east. The day before, the following cities came under heavy artillery fire: Avdiivka, Siversk, Bakhmut, Slavyansk, Kostyantynivka. In Slavyansk, Russian shells hit residential buildings. Here, there were 2 missile launches into a multi-story building, and a direct hit into a 5-story building. As a result of the shelling, a woman was wounded and an elderly man died. In total, 5 civilians of Donetsk region died as a result of the actions of the occupiers on September 12. 10 more people were injured. Our film crew has just returned from the site of the rocket landing.
Everything fell on the bed. Now the bed has holes all over it. If someone was sleeping here, then probably. All furniture is damaged.
The windows of the woman's apartment overlooked the place where the rocket hit. The exact time of arrival was recorded by a clock that had stopped.
This clock hung in the kitchen. The explosion was from the side of the room, and regardless of the 3 rooms, they stopped. At this time,
a large family lives in the adjacent entrance of this house. Elena has 4 children. At the time of the bombardment, everyone was at home. The blast wave knocked out all the windows and doors in the apartment. The youngest child was saved by the bed because it withstood the fall of the wardrobe. However, even after such a missile strike, people from their hometown do not want to evacuate.
There is nowhere to go. No money, no work. Since February 24th, we have been staying at home, me, my husband and 4 children. Where to go? Heavily. If there was somewhere to live, but we have no other options. And money is a problem.
However, if the Russians had not tried to attack the cities of Ukraine, destroying the infrastructure, the residents of this building in Kostyantynivka have already been vaccinated against the Russian peace. People say they survived, and that's the most important thing. Everyone we talk to believes in the victory of our armed forces and is waiting for the liberation of the entire East. Because since 2014, many Ukrainians have been dreaming of moving to their homes in Luhansk and Donetsk. At this point, I have everything. Tatiana.
Thank you. The Donetsk region was in touch with us. In the city of Crimea in the Luhansk region, the partisans hung the Ukrainian flag, and the occupiers began to flee. This was announced by the head of the Luhansk Regional Military Administration, Serhiy Gaidar. He emphasized, there are not even any armed forces in Crimea yet, and the enemy is already fleeing. There are kilometer-long queues to the border with Russia, Gaidar noted. In addition, the Ukrainian flag also flies on electric poles in the Stavropol and Svatov districts. Our defenders have not reached here yet.
The Ukrainian flag still hangs, no one takes it down. Why? Because the commandant's office, military prosecutors, all left the city. They packed things and left. And local collaborators, it seems to me, are afraid to remove the Ukrainian flag. They must feel that it will be hot.
Ukrainian defenders have already liberated 3,800 square kilometers from Russian troops in the Kharkiv region. The number of deoccupied settlements reached 300. More than 150,000 Ukrainians were released from the occupation. This was stated by the Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Hanna Malyar. Today she arrived in the city of Balaklia, freed from the invaders. The operation to deoccupy Kharkiv region is still ongoing, and Malyar is sure that it will happen as soon as possible. The resilience and spirit of Ukrainians is impressive. The Russians deprived them of any connection here. And none of these people, in fact, had the opportunity to learn about the events in the territory controlled by Ukraine. They were told that Ukraine no longer exists, that Ukraine already has a different president, that Ukraine will not come for them. But all our people, everyone with whom we spoke today, they were all steadfast, waiting, believing that the armed forces would come and liberate them. When ours entered Balaklia, when the shelling became less. I live next to the county road where the machinery was going. I ran through the garden. I see, these guys are sitting like sparrows on top of this transport. We waved at them, and in response they unfurled the flag and shot a video. It was a great joy. My heart burst with happiness that ours returned, thank God. The occupiers are urgently evacuating their families from Crimea and south to Russia. This was reported by the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine. The occupying power assures that the peninsula is safe, but the imposter government officials, FSB officers and commanders of military units. They are trying to secretly sell their homes and urgently take their relatives out of Crimea. They are trying in every possible way to block access to information about the counteroffensive of Ukrainian troops. The successful actions of the defenders of Ukraine, according to intelligence, force the so-called authorities of the temporarily occupied territories to evacuate their families urgently. This is confirmed by the chairman of the Mejlis of the Crimean Tatar People, Rafat Chubarov. He spoke about the mood among the local population, considering the successful counteroffensive of our troops.
In Crimea, it was expected that the armed forces of Ukraine, having liberated Kherson, would immediately go to Chongar and further to the peninsula. Now they seem to be a little disappointed. But, along with this, they also have great joy from the victory of the armed forces. Everyone understands that the next step in the Kharkiv direction will be the liberation of the southern territories of Ukraine, including Crimea.
In Mariupol, a patrol of the occupiers was blown up. 3 occupiers were hospitalized in a hospital in Donetsk. This was reported by Petr Andrushenko, the servicemen of Mariupol. He added that these are the invaders who tried to catch up with the Mariupol partisans and erase the letter Y. This letter is drawn as a sign of resistance. Fortunately, none of the representatives of the protest movement were injured. 202nd day of the war. For those about whom our next article is, this is also the 121st day in Russian captivity. We are talking about Azov soldiers, National Guardsmen, Marines, policemen, volunteers and Terebron men. All those boys and girls who defended Mariupol. Do the Ukrainian authorities know where they are being held? Natalia Nietzsche will tell how soldiers are treated in Russian captivity, and what Ukraine is doing for their return. Nastya has not seen her husband. 3-year-old Tyuma has been a father since February 23. It was their last day in their native Mariupol. Nastya left as a child, and her husband remained to defend the city. I still had my father and my sister's husband in Mariupol. All Azovians survived the merciless bombing of Azovstal and ended up in a colony in Olenivka after leaving the factory. This is the last that Nastya knows about them. My sister and I found her husband in the Russian news. They tried to interview him, but he refused. They pressured him morally. The person has completely changed. You can say that the body of a 12-year-old boy, and the face of a grandfather. Although, the man is 30 years old. The room is 12 square meters. For example, 3 in length and 4 in width. Can you imagine 50 people in it? This is how Ukrainian defenders are kept in Russian captivity. When they want to drink, they are given a 2-liter bottle of water. One for all. This information is not just a shocking fact. Human Rights Commissioner Dmytro Lubinets assures. In Ukraine, there is evidence of such treatment of the captured defenders of Azovstal.
We record the mass use of torture against our servicemen. With the use of electric current, with the use of physical force. We have established all the locations where the defenders of Mariupol will be held captive. There are separate questions regarding several servicemen who are on the territory of the Russian Federation.
However, the locations of the prisoners of war were not determined according to the lists that, according to the norms of international legislation, Russia had to provide. This was established according to Ukrainian special services. Although, according to the Geneva Conventions, Russia should report on the places of detention of Ukrainian prisoners of war. Russia is obliged to allow representatives of the Red Cross to visit prisoners of war and to allow correspondence with relatives at least once a month. Instead, listen.
Some kind of worker, maybe a nurse, comes with a big smile, like the jokers, from one ear to the other. She tells about the problems that started in Ukraine. About the fact that everything is bad in Ukraine and that no one will liberate us, that Ukraine does not need us.
This is how Bito, the defender of Azovstal, tells about his stay in captivity, who was taken out of the factory with burns all over his body and shrapnel in his skull. He spent the entire time of captivity in hospitals. He was lucky enough to become one of the 95 defenders of Mariupol who were exchanged. Almost 2 months have passed since the cynical terrorist attack in Olenivka, during which approximately 50 Ukrainian defenders were killed. Russia still has not provided official lists of the dead and wounded and has not allowed representatives of international organizations to the scene of the crime. And nobody can do anything about it.
According to international law, as it is written, there is no responsibility for what the aggressor country does. The most effective mechanism for combating such a crime at the moment is what the armed forces of Ukraine are doing. What they do both in the Kharkiv direction and in the Kherson direction.
The further the armed forces advance, the more Russian soldiers are captured. This means that later it will be possible to negotiate new exchanges. Meanwhile, relatives of defenders are still in their struggle. Nastya and her son have been going to rallies in the center of the capital every day for several weeks and will continue to do so. We plan to stay here for 6 months. We have to be equal to our relatives' heroes. So that it does not happen that they are powerful, and we rub our snot here. Abito does not yet know how long he will have to spend in hospitals. However, as soon as he recovers, he is going to the front line, to the front. He believes that his brothers will endure and wait for the moment when they can hug their relatives again.
Everyone wants to go home. Everyone wants to go to the family. They will stick. The main thing is to somehow convey to them the information that they are remembered, loved and expected here.
Natalia Nietzsche, Oleksiy Yevchenko, Volodymyr Kovalenko, The Window Program, STB, The Single News Marathon. Finally, about the good. The Ukrainian military destroyed the pride of the Russian defense industry, the heavy flamethrower system Sontsepok. This was reported by ground forces of the Ukrainian armed forces. It is not specified in which of the directions it happened. However, it is known for certain that Sontsepok fell in half after being hit. That's all. Victory to us and let's keep in line. See you. The marathon continues.